All right, so let's talk procrastination. You ever find yourself suddenly reorganizing your sock drawer when you're, facing a deadline?
Oh, yeah.
I think we've all been there.
Mm-hmm.
But today, we're going to really dive into this, why we do it, the impact it has, and most importantly, how to break free.
Yeah.
We've got a psychology article, a motivational blog post, and even a productivity-focused article all about this stuff.
It's funny. Procrastination, it's not just laziness. Like, that psychology article talks about self-regulation, how procrastination is basically a failure in that area.
Hmm.
Like, you should be working on something, that presentation or finishing that project, but your brain just slams on the brakes.
It really does feel like an internal battle sometimes. Like, I should be doing this, but then there's this other voice like, but what if we, clean the bathroom instead?
Right.
But, at least I'm not alone in this. That same article mentioned that something like 75% of college students say they're chronic procrastinators.
Yeah. So you're definitely not alone if you struggle with this. What I found really interesting is the article really digs into why we do this, why the self-regulation breaks down. One big thing is how we see time. Our brains, they trick us into thinking we have more time than we actually do.
Oh, I'm so guilty of that.
Yeah.
I'll start that tomorrow.
Like,
Plenty of time. Famous last words. Wow.
exactly. This false sense of time, it's like self-sabotage, And it goes hand in hand with another procrastination pitfall, waiting for the right mood to strike, like waiting for motivation.
Oh, yeah, waiting for that motivation fairy to show up. I'll get started once I feel inspired.
Yeah.
That's probably not a recipe for success, is it?
More often than not, no. That article actually debunks that myth. It says motivation actually comes after you start doing something, not the other way around.
So don't wait for inspiration. Just dive in, even if I don't feel like it.
That's the key. Got to break the cycle of, not doing anything. And speaking of cycles, that psychology article talked about all the mental gymnastics we do to, justify our procrastination. They call them cognitive distortions.
Cognitive distortions.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of scary. What are those exactly?
Basically, they're thought patterns that distort reality, make it easier for us to procrastinate. We tell ourselves, I work better under pressure, which conveniently lets us put off doing the task. Or we overestimate how much time we have, underestimate how long something will actually take, or convince ourselves we need to be in the perfect mood to begin.
Wow. Yeah, I definitely do some of that. I catch myself thinking, I can't write this article until I have the perfect playlist, queued up. It's like I'm building a mental obstacle course for myself.
That's a good way to put it. And then there's the fear factor. That blog post we have, it talks a lot about the role of fear in procrastination.
Fear. Really? I always figured it was more about laziness or lack of discipline.
Well, those can play a part. But fear is often way bigger than we realize. Think about a deadline, right? It can feel like a threat. Triggers a fear response in your brain.
Okay, but a deadline, it's not actually dangerous, right?
Not logically, no. But to your amygdala, that's the part of your brain that handles, fear and stuff. It can feel just as real as a physical threat. It's like your brain is going, danger, avoid.
So we run away, not from an actual bear,
Yeah.
but from the danger of the task.
Basically, it's not that we don't want to do it. It's that our brain's trying to protect us from, the discomfort, the possibility of failing, or being judged.
So that feeling of relief we get when we procrastinate, it's our brain giving us a break from the deadline bear.
Exactly.
I like that image.
It's powerful. And this fear-driven procrastination, it can be extra hard for people who, have trouble managing their emotions or who struggle with their self-esteem. They might be more sensitive to failing or to what other people think, and that makes them avoid things even more.
This is starting to make a lot of sense. So it's not that I'm lazy or don't have willpower. It's my brain trying to protect me, even if it ends up backfiring.
That's a great way to put it. And this actually connects to another important point from that blog post. Procrastinators, they often really care about their work.
Really?
Yeah. They might be perfectionists, terrified of not meeting their own super high standards. Or they might be really sensitive to what others think.
So not that they don't care, it's that they care too much.
Yeah, and that fear of messing up.
Yeah.
Or of being criticized. It can be paralyzing. It can be really tough. And before we move on to what procrastination actually costs us and how to actually break free, there's this point in that psychology article, really fascinating. It says that not all procrastination is the same.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Different types of procrastinators.
Exactly. It talks about passive procrastinators and active procrastinators.
Okay, now I'm really curious. What's the difference?
So passive procrastinators, they kind of feel overwhelmed, frozen by indecision, they have trouble getting started. Maybe they're not sure where to begin. Or the task just seems too big, too much.
So they're just staring at their to-do list, hoping it'll disappear on its own.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I know a few people like that.
They're stuck. Can't seem to get out of that cycle of not doing anything. But active procrastinators, they're a whole different story. They actually delay things on purpose. They thrive under pressure. They actually believe they do their best work at the last minute.
Yeah, I work best under pressure. But isn't that like just an excuse for procrastinating?
It can be, for sure. Some people really do perform better when the deadline's right there, but it's still procrastination. And always relying on that last-minute rush, that can lead to serious stress and burnout.
Right, and I bet it doesn't help with planning.
Ew.
Or with your relationships if you're always scrambling to beat deadlines.
Definitely not.
Speaking of relationships, that blog post mentioned how procrastination can actually hurt them.
Oh, absolutely. Procrastination, it doesn't just affect you. When you're constantly putting things off, you miss deadlines, you break promises, people get disappointed, colleagues, loved ones.
Yeah, it's like a ripple effect. Hurts you and the people around you.
Exactly. And that same blog post, it had this interesting paradox that procrastination, it gives you temporary relief, right? Like you avoid that task, you feel better for a minute, but it actually reinforces that avoidance. So in the long run, it makes it even harder to break the habit.
It's a trap. You procrastinate to feel better, but then it just makes things worse.
Pretty much. Procrastination is a vicious cycle.
Sounds like it. So breaking free, it takes more than just willpower or time management.
It's more than that.
It's like we need to rewire our brains.
You're getting it. Luckily, there are things we can do.
Okay, good. Lay it on me. Where do we even start?
So that Medium article, it emphasizes self-compassion. Might sound weird, but being hard on yourself for procrastinating, it actually backfires.
I can see that. When I'm like in a procrastination spiral, I get really down on myself.
Yeah, that's normal. But that article says we need to be understanding, treat ourselves with kindness, like we would a friend who's struggling.
Okay, so less, what's wrong with you, get it together. More, hey, it's okay, we all do this sometimes.
Exactly. Self-compassion, it helps create a more supportive inner voice, less shame, less guilt.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So self-compassion is key. What else can we do to actually change our mindset?
Well, one of the best strategies is to break down those big, scary tasks, make them smaller, more manageable. That article calls these micro goals.
Oh, yeah, the baby steps approach.
Yeah.
I know about that, but sometimes I forget to actually do it.
It's easy to get overwhelmed when you're looking at the whole thing.
Yeah.
But if you just focus on one tiny step at a time, it feels way less intimidating.
That's true.
And each time you hit one of those micro goals, even if it's just writing one paragraph.
Yeah.
Or spending 15 minutes cleaning your desk, you got to acknowledge that win.
Celebrate the small stuff.
Yeah, it builds momentum, helps you feel like you're actually accomplishing things.
I like that. It's like you're training your brain to see taking action as a good thing,
Exactly.
not something to be afraid of. What about time blocking? I've seen that a lot, but never tried it.
Time blocking is awesome for creating structure and minimizing distractions. It's basically scheduling specific blocks of time for each task. And then you treat those blocks like important appointments.
So it's like a visual roadmap for your day.
Yeah, you know exactly what you need to do and when. Gets rid of that ambiguity that often leads to procrastination.
Right, no more. I'll get to that later, which usually means never.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm putting time blocking on my list to try. Now, there's one technique I'm really curious about, the 5-second rule. That Medium article made it sound almost too simple.
The 5-second rule, it's from Mel Robbins. And it is super simple, but that's kind of the beauty of it.
How does it work?
So next time you feel yourself about to procrastinate, count backwards from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then just start the task. Doesn't matter how small.
I see. You don't give your brain time to come up with excuses.
You got it. That countdown, it interrupts that automatic procrastinate response.
Sneaky.
It's a great way to get over that initial resistance.
Like a Jedi mind trick.
Yeah, kinda. And speaking of tricking your brain, let's talk about rewards.
Rewards. I'm listening.
This is all about positive reinforcement. When you finish a task, especially one you've been putting off, you give yourself a reward.
Okay, what kind of rewards?
Anything that motivates you. A little treat, take a break to do something fun, listen to your favorite music, or just take a moment to really appreciate what you accomplish.
Yeah, like feel proud of yourself.
Exactly. The point is to connect finishing tasks with something positive.
Not with stress and avoidance.
Right.
So you turn I have to do this into I get to do this, and then I get this awesome reward.
Exactly.
It makes procrastination seem kind of dumb when you put it like that.
Yeah, it's like a whole different way of looking at things. And, that's one of the big takeaways here. Procrastination, it's not like some personality defect. It's a habit. And habits, well, you can change those.
It's kind of empowering, actually, knowing we have more control over this than we think.
Absolutely. Once you understand it, you can start to change it.
So just to recap for our listeners,
Yeah.
procrastination, it's not about laziness, it's more about fear.
Right.
And about how we regulate ourselves, our emotions, our actions.
You talked about those cognitive distortions, too, how our brains trick us into procrastinating.
Oh, yeah, those were wild.
And how procrastination, even though it feels good in the moment, actually just makes things worse in the long run.
It's a trap.
A sneaky one.
We also learned there are different kinds of procrastinators.
Right, not everyone's the same.
Which I thought was really interesting.
It's about figuring out what your patterns are and finding what works for you.
And we got a whole bunch of strategies to try.
Yeah, like self-compassion.
Breaking those big tasks down into smaller ones.
Micro goals.
The 5-second rule.
And rewarding ourselves for getting things done.
Positive reinforcement. So, before we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with one last thought.
Okay.
We know why we procrastinate, but now we got to actually do something about it.
Action time.
So for everyone listening, think about your own procrastination.
Yeah, like what triggers it for you?
What are you afraid of? What makes you anxious?
And which strategy are you going to try this week?
Will you break down a big task?
Or maybe try time blocking.
Even just picking one thing and trying it, that's a huge step.
You got this.
And remember, you are not alone. Everyone struggles with this.
It's totally normal.
But with a little effort, a little self-awareness, you can break free. No more deadline bears chasing you around.
You're in control now.
So go out there and get things done.